The year was 2157, and the massive space station called Harmony Point floated peacefully between Earth and the distant Valtharian Empire. This wasn't just any ordinary space station. It was the most important meeting place in the galaxy, where different alien species came together to make peace, trade goods, and solve problems that could affect entire worlds. Today was special. The Valtharian Empire's royal family was arriving for the most important peace talks in decades. Everyone was excited and nervous at the same time. The Valtharians were known throughout the galaxy for two things: their amazing technology that could heal almost any disease, and their obsession with physical perfection. Dr. David Kim stood at the observation window, watching the Valtharian ships approach. As Earth's top expert on alien cultures, he had studied the Valtharians for years, but this was his first time seeing them in person. At 34 years old, David walked with a slight limp from a childhood accident that had cost him his left leg. His prosthetic leg was so advanced that most people never noticed, but David always remembered how it felt to be different. The Valtharian ships were breathtaking. It looked like giant butterflies made of crystal and light, their wings shimmering, with colors that changed as they moved. When the ships docked, the station's main bay filled with curious diplomats and scientists from dozens of different worlds. The Valtharian royal family stepped out of their ship and gasps echoed through the crowd. They were tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Beautiful wings stretched from their shoulders, covered in patterns that sparkled, like stars. Their eyes were large and luminous, shifting between different shades of blue and green. Emperor Zethan walked in front, his massive wings spread wide to show his authority. Behind him came his daughters, the princesses. Princess Lyra moved with grace, her wings perfectly symmetrical and gleaming. Princess Naya followed, equally beautiful and confident. But as David watched carefully, he noticed something strange. There should have been a third princess, but he only saw two. The welcome ceremony began with great fanfare. Leaders from different worlds gave speeches about peace and cooperation. The Valtharians responded with their own elegant words, but David noticed they kept glancing back toward their ships, as if someone was missing. During the first diplomatic dinner, David sat with other human scientists and diplomats. The conversation was polite but tense. Everyone knew that these talks would determine whether humans and Valtharians became allies or remained suspicious neighbors. The Valtharian princes and nobles moved through the crowd, introducing themselves to potential partners. In their culture, important agreements were often sealed through bonding ceremonies between royal families. David watched as suitors approached Princess Lyra and Princess Naya, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was incomplete. Later that evening, David decided to explore the station's quieter areas. He often did this when he needed to think. The observation deck on level 7 was usually empty at this hour, offering a perfect view of the stars. As he entered the dimly lit space, he saw a figure sitting alone near the large windows. At first, he thought it was just another diplomat taking a break from the formal events, but as his eyes adjusted to the low light, he realized this was someone he hadn't seen before. It was a Valtharian female, but something was different about her. Her wings were asymmetrical, one slightly larger than the other, and they trembled slightly as she sat. The beautiful light patterns that decorated other Valtharians flickered irregularly on her skin, sometimes bright, sometimes dim. She was drawing in a small notebook, her head bent in concentration. David hesitated. He didn't want to intrude, but something about her posture suggested deep sadness. She looked up suddenly, sensing his presence, and their eyes met. Hers were the most beautiful shade of violet he had ever seen, but they held a pain that made his heart ache. She started to leave, clearly uncomfortable with being seen, but David spoke softly. "Please don't go. I'm just here to look at the stars too." She paused, studying him with those remarkable eyes. "You are the human scientist," she said in perfect English, though her accent was musical and strange. "I have read your papers on interspecies communication." David was surprised.
You know my work?
"I know many things," she replied, settling back into her seat, but keeping some distance. "Knowledge is one of the few things I'm allowed to have freely." There was something in her tone that made David curious. He sat down nearby, not too close, and looked out at the stars. "It's beautiful out here. Peaceful." "Yes," she agreed. Away from the ceremonies and expectations, they sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. David noticed that her notebook was filled with detailed sketches of different star systems, along with notes in both Veltharian and human languages. "You're an artist," he observed. "I'm many things," she said quietly, "but none of them matter to most people." David sensed there was a story here, but he didn't want to push. Instead, he asked, "What's your favorite constellation?" For the first time, she smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "The woven stars," she said, pointing to a cluster of bright points. "Your people call it the Pleiades. In our stories, it represents 7 sisters who chose to stay together despite pressure to separate." "That's beautiful," David said, genuinely moved. "And meaningful." She looked at him with surprise, as if she wasn't used to having her thoughts taken seriously. "You think so?" "I do. Stories about staying together despite pressure are important. They remind us that some bonds are stronger than outside forces." They talked for another hour about stars, stories, and the challenges of understanding different cultures. David learned that she was incredibly intelligent, with insights into human behavior that impressed him. She had studied Earth's history, literature, and science with a passion that most academics would envy. When she finally stood to leave, David realized he didn't want their conversation to end. "Will I see you at tomorrow's sessions?" She hesitated. "I am not usually part of the formal events." "That's a shame," David said honestly. "You have more interesting things to say than most of the diplomats I've met." She looked at him with those violet eyes, and for a moment David saw hope flicker. "There, perhaps," she said softly, "we will meet again among the stars." As she walked away, David noticed her wings move differently than other Veltharians he had seen. They weren't broken or damaged, just different. Somehow that difference made her more interesting, not less. The next day, David found himself looking for her during the diplomatic sessions. He caught glimpses of her in the background, always watching, always taking notes, but never participating. It bothered him more than he could explain. During lunch, he overheard 2 Veltharian nobles talking quietly. "The Emperor keeps her hidden for good reason," one said. "Her condition brings shame to the royal line. Such a waste." The other replied, "She has a brilliant mind, but who would want to bond with someone so flawed?" David felt anger rise in his chest. How could they dismiss someone so remarkable because of physical differences? He thought about his own prosthetic leg and the years of proving himself despite others' assumptions. That evening, he returned to the observation deck, hoping to find her again. She was there, as if she had been waiting. He came back. "She said," sounding surprised but pleased. "I said I would," David replied, sitting beside her. "I always keep my promises." She smiled that transformative smile again. "That is a rare quality in my experience." As they talked under the stars, David began to understand the weight of loneliness she carried. She was Princess Zara, the 3rd daughter of the Emperor, hidden away because her physical differences were seen as a sign of spiritual weakness in Veltharian culture. But as David got to know her, he saw only strength, intelligence, and a kindness that had survived despite years of rejection. She was everything a leader should be, and more than that, she was becoming someone very special to him. The question was, would he have the courage to do something about it? Chat controls Sonnet 4. The next few days on Harmony Point were filled with formal meetings and careful diplomacy. But David found himself thinking more about Princess Zara than about trade agreements. Every morning, he would scan the diplomatic halls hoping to catch a glimpse of her violet eyes or hear her musical voice asking thoughtful questions from the shadows. It wasn't until the 3rd day that he saw her again. She was standing behind a group of Veltharian advisors, quietly translating documents. David noticed that whenever she whispered suggestions to the older diplomats, they would nod and use her ideas as if they were their own. She never seemed bothered by this, but it made David's jaw clench with frustration. During a break between sessions, David approached the area where she was working. "Princess Zara," he said softly, so as not to attract attention from the other Veltharians. She looked up surprised, but pleased. Dr. Kim, I didn't expect to see you here. I was hoping we could continue our conversation about the woven stars, he said, using their code for the peaceful talks they shared. Perhaps you could show me more of your star charts? A small smile played at her lips. I would like that very much. They met that evening in a small garden area of the station, away from the main diplomatic quarters. Zara had brought her notebook, and David was amazed by the detailed drawings and observations she had made. Her artwork wasn't just beautiful, it was scientifically accurate and showed a deep understanding of space navigation that impressed him. How did you learn all this? David asked, studying a particularly complex diagram of solar wind patterns. I have had much time to study, Zara said quietly. When you are not invited to social events or bonding ceremonies, you find other ways to spend your days.
Wow.
David heard the pain in her voice, but also the strength. Their loss is knowledge's gain, he said. These observations are brilliant. Have you shared them with your father's scientific advisors? Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. They would not listen to suggestions from someone like me. In our culture, physical perfection reflects mental and spiritual perfection. Since my body is flawed, they assume my mind must be as well. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, David said, his voice sharper than he intended. Your mind is one of the most impressive I've encountered, and I've worked with scientists from 12 different species. Zara stared at him in surprise. You truly mean that? I never say things I don't mean, David replied. Your insights about human behavior yesterday were spot on. You understand our motivations better than most humans do. Over the following evenings, their meetings became a regular occurrence. David would finish his diplomatic duties and then find Zara in various quiet corners of the station. Sometimes they talked about science, sometimes about art, and sometimes about the loneliness of feeling different in worlds that demanded conformity. David learned that Zara spoke 7 languages fluently and had designed several improvements to Veltharian technology that were currently being used throughout their empire, though she received no credit. She had also written poetry that moved him to tears and composed music that somehow captured the feeling of starlight on water. You're not just intelligent, David told her one evening as they watched ships arriving and departing through the station's main viewport. You're gifted in ways your people haven't even recognized. You see me differently than others do, Zara said, her wings flickering with soft light. I do not understand why.
How?
David thought about his answer carefully. Because I know what it's like to be judged for something beyond your control. People see my prosthetic leg and make assumptions about what I can or can't do. But the truth is, overcoming challenges often makes us stronger and more creative than people who never had to struggle. Zara looked at him with new understanding. You have faced rejection because of your difference too. Many times, David admitted, but those experiences taught me that real worth comes from who you are inside, not what you look like outside. There. Growing friendship didn't go unnoticed. Princess Lyra approached David after a formal dinner, her perfect wings rustling with displeasure. Dr. Kim, she said in her melodic but cold voice, I must speak with you about your interactions with my sister. David kept his expression neutral. What about them, Your Highness? Zara is not suitable company for someone of your diplomatic standing, Lyra said bluntly. Her condition is a source of shame for our family. Associating with her could damage your reputation and harm the peace negotiations. With respect, Your Highness, David replied carefully, I find Princess Zara to be excellent company. She's intelligent, kind, and has insights that have actually helped me better understand Veltharian culture. Lyra's eyes flashed with surprise, an annoyance you do not understand. In our society, she is considered defective. No honorable Veltharian would choose to bond with someone so imperfect. Then perhaps the problem isn't with Princess Zara, David said quietly. Perhaps the problem is with a society that can't see past surface differences to recognize true value. Lyra stared at him for a long moment, then swept away without another word. David knew he had probably made an enemy, but he didn't care. Zara deserved better than to be hidden away like a shameful secret. The human diplomats weren't much better. Captain Rodriguez, David's supervisor, pulled him aside the next day. Kim, What's this I hear about you spending time with the disabled princess? She has a name, David said firmly. Princess Zara. And yes, I enjoy our conversations. This isn't about personal enjoyment, Rodriguez warned. These negotiations are crucial for Earth's future. We can't afford to offend the Veltharians by appearing to mock their customs. How is treating someone with basic respect mocking their customs? By giving attention to someone they've clearly designated as unworthy, you're challenging their entire social structure, Rodriguez explained. That's not our job here. David felt his temper rising. So we're supposed to participate in discrimination because it's convenient? We're supposed to be diplomatic? Rodriguez said sharply. I'm ordering you to limit your interactions with Princess Zara to official business only. That evening, David sat in the observation deck feeling frustrated and conflicted. When Zara arrived for their usual meeting, he could see in her eyes that she knew something was wrong. They have spoken to you, she said simply, settling into her usual spot, but keeping more distance than usual. How did you know? It was inevitable. Zara sighed. I am sorry, David. I should not have been so selfish. Your career is important, and I have put it at risk. My career isn't more important than doing what's right, David said firmly. And getting to know you has been the best part of this entire diplomatic mission. Zara's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. You do not understand the full cost. In my culture, associating with me marks you as someone with poor judgment. Your own people see it as a diplomatic mistake. I cannot ask you to sacrifice so much for friendship with someone who will never be able to give you anything in return. You're already giving me something invaluable, David said, moving closer to her. You're showing me what real strength looks like. What intelligence and kindness and creativity look like when they're not wrapped in a perfect package. Just then, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed, and an automated voice announced, Bioneural system failure detected. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately. The station's life support systems were failing, and if they couldn't fix it soon, everyone on board would be in deadly danger. As chaos erupted around them, David saw something in Zara's eyes that he had never seen before. Determination mixed with fear. I can help, she whispered. But if I do, everyone will know I was here. Everyone will know what I am. David looked at her, understanding dawning. You can interface with the bioneural systems, can't you? That's why your light patterns are different. Zara nodded. Guy. My condition allows me to connect with bioneural networks in ways others cannot. If I save everyone, I will no longer be able to hide. As people ran through the corridors in panic, David took her hand. Make sure that when they see you, they see a hero. The emergency alarm screamed through Harmony Point as David and Zara ran toward the station's central core. The bioneural network that controlled life support was failing, and technicians from multiple species were frantically trying to fix it, but their attempts were making things worse. The oxygen levels are dropping too fast, shouted Chief Engineer Torres as she worked at a control panel. If we can't reconnect the bioneural pathways in the next 20 minutes, we'll lose life. Support completely. David watched as Veltharian and human experts tried different approaches, but none of them could establish a stable connection with the living computer system. The bioneural network was like a massive brain made of organic circuits, and it was shutting down section by section. Let me try, Zara said quietly, but her voice was lost in the chaos of shouting technicians and blaring alarms. David grabbed her hand. Are you sure about this? Zara looked around at the panicking crowd, then back at David. Hundreds of people will die if I do nothing. My reputation doesn't matter if everyone is dead. She stepped forward, her voice stronger this time. Please, let me help. Emperor Zethan, who had arrived to oversee the crisis, turned in shock. Zara, what are you doing here? I can interface with the bioneural network, she said, her wings trembling but her voice steady. My neural patterns are compatible with the system. That's impossible, said Dr. Valdez, the human chief science officer. No one has ever been able to directly connect with bioneural systems. I can, Zara insisted. My condition allows me to do things others cannot. The Emperor looked embarrassed and angry. Zara, return to your quarters immediately. This is not the time for your fantasies. Father, please, Zara said, stepping toward the main bioneural interface. I've been practicing with smaller systems for years. I know I can do this. The oxygen levels dropped another 5%. People were starting to feel dizzy, and several had already collapsed. Time was running out. Let her try, David said loudly, drawing everyone's attention. What do we have to lose? Our dignity, Princess Lyra said coldly. She's delusional if she thinks she can succeed where trained experts have failed. But Chief Engineer Torres was looking at the failing readouts with desperation. At this point, I'm willing to try anything. We've got maybe 15 minutes before total life support failure. Zara approached the bioneural interface, the organic-looking panel covered in pulsing lights and nerve-like connections. She placed her hands on the surface, and immediately her light patterns began to synchronize with the system's flickering rhythms. The room fell silent except for the alarms. Everyone watched as Zara's irregular light patterns, which had always been seen as a flaw, suddenly made perfect sense. She was communicating with the bioneural network in a language of light and energy that no one else could speak. The system is scared, Zara said, her eyes closed in concentration. It's trying to protect itself from the damage, but it's cutting off vital connections. I need to show it that we're here to help, not hurt. Her light patterns grew brighter and more complex, creating a beautiful dance of color across her skin. The bioneural network responded, its own lights beginning to pulse in harmony with hers. It's working, Torres whispered, watching as system. After system came back online, the oxygen levels are stabilizing. For the next 10 minutes, Zara worked in perfect harmony with the massive bioneural system. She guided it through repairs, helped it reroute around damaged sections, and gradually brought all life support systems back to full capacity. When she finally stepped back from the interface, the station was humming with perfect efficiency. The emergency alarms stopped and normal lighting returned. Everyone in the room stared at Zara with a mixture of awe and confusion. How did you do that? Dr. Valdez asked, his voice filled with genuine wonder. My neural patterns are different. Because of my condition, Zara explained, swaying slightly from exhaustion. What you see as a flaw allows me to connect with bioneural systems in ways others cannot. I've been studying and practicing for years, hoping someday I might be useful. Inkbrew. Zethon looked at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time. You saved us all. She's been saving people all along, David said firmly. You just haven't been paying attention. The news of Zara's heroism spread quickly through the station. By the next morning, everyone knew that the forgotten princess had prevented a disaster that would have killed hundreds. Diplomats who had ignored her existence were now calling her a hero. The peace negotiations resumed with a new energy. Both humans and Veltharians were impressed by what they had witnessed, and it sparked conversations about hidden talents and the value of differences. 3 days later, during a formal dinner celebrating the successful repairs, David made a decision that would change everything. He stood up from his seat at the human diplomatic table and walked across the room to where Zara sat alone. As always, at the edge of the Veltharian section, the entire room fell silent as he approached her. Princess Lyra looked shocked. Emperor. Zethon frowned in confusion. Captain Rodriguez looked like he might faint. David stopped in front of Zara's chair and looked down at her beautiful violet eyes. Princess Zara, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. I have a question to ask you. Zara looked up at him, her light patterns flickering with nervousness. Yes. David took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to do would change both their lives forever. Will you bond with me? The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear the hum of the station's engines. Diplomats from a dozen species stared in shock. Some humans gasped. Several Veltharians looked like they might be sick. Emperor Zethon rose slowly from his seat, his face dark with anger. This is outrageous. Dr. Kim, you cannot be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, David replied, not taking his eyes off Zara. Princess Zara is the most remarkable person I've ever met. She's brilliant, kind, brave, and she just saved all our lives. I would be honored to bond with her. She is defective, Princess Lyra said harshly. Her condition makes her unsuitable for bonding with anyone, let alone a human diplomat. Her condition makes her unique, David said firmly. Gives her abilities that no one else has. She can do things that saved hundreds of lives. How is that defective? Captain Rodriguez stood up, his face red with embarrassment. Dr. Kim, you're out of line? This is not appropriate diplomatic behavior. Maybe traditional diplomacy is the problem, David said, finally turning to address the room. Maybe we need to stop judging people by outdated standards and start recognizing real worth when we see it. He turned back to Zara, who had tears streaming down her face. You don't have to answer now, he said gently. But I want you to know that I see you. I see your intelligence, your kindness, your strength. I see someone worthy of love and respect. Zara stood up slowly, her wings trembling. David, she whispered, do you truly mean this? I mean every word, he said, taking her hand. I'm not asking because I pity you or because I want to make a political statement. I'm asking because you've become the most important person in my life. The room erupted in chaos. Some diplomats were shouting. Others were whispering frantically to their colleagues. But David and Zara only had eyes for each other. Yes, Zara said, her voice clear and strong despite her tears. Yes, I will bond with you. As they stood there holding hands, surrounded by the chaos of two cultures clashing, David knew that this was just the beginning. They would face opposition, criticism, and challenges that neither of them could imagine. But for the first time in her life, Zara was no longer alone. And for the first time in his life, David had found someone worth fighting for. The days following David's shocking proposal were unlike anything Harmony Point had ever seen. News of the human diplomat asking to bond with the disabled Veltharian princess spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communications. Some called it romantic, others called it scandalous, but everyone had an opinion. David woke up each morning to find his communication device flooded with messages. Some were supportive, from scientists and progressive thinkers who admired his courage, but many were harsh criticisms from Earth's diplomatic corps, calling him reckless and unprofessional. You've created an interstellar incident, Captain Rodriguez told him during an emergency meeting. The diplomatic council wants you recalled to Earth immediately. For what? David asked, though he kept his voice calm. For treating someone with respect? For proposing to bond with alien royalty without proper authorization? Rodriguez snapped. This could destroy decades of careful diplomatic work. Meanwhile, Zara faced her own battles. Emperor Zethon had confined her to the royal quarters, furious that she had embarrassed the family in front of the entire galaxy. Princess Lyra visited her daily, trying to convince her to reject David's proposal. Think about what you're doing. To our family's reputation? Lyra pleaded during one of these visits. Father is considering disowning you completely. Perhaps that would be for the best, Zara replied quietly, staring out at the stars. I have never truly belonged in this family anyway. Don't say that, Lyra said, and for the first time, her voice held genuine concern rather than just irritation. You're my sister. When did you last treat me like a sister? Zara asked. When did you last defend me, or include me, or even acknowledge my existence in public? Lyra fell silent, unable to answer. But not everyone opposed the unusual bonding. Dr. Elena Vasquez, David's research partner, had been working frantically since the proposal. She burst into his quarters 3 days later with a datapad full of information. David, you need to see this, she said excitedly. I've been analyzing the bio-neural interface recordings from when Zara saved the station. What did you find? Her neural patterns aren't just different, they're evolved, Elena explained, showing him complex brain scans. It's the same genetic condition. That makes her wings asymmetrical, has created new neural pathways in her brain. She can process bio-neural languages that shouldn't even be possible. David studied the data, amazed. This proves she's not defective at all. More than that, Elena continued. If a human and Veltharian, with her specific neural patterns, bonded, it could create a consciousness bridge between our species. We could literally share thoughts and experiences in ways never before possible. You're saying our bond wouldn't just be symbolic? I'm saying it could revolutionize how different species understand each other, Alina said firmly. This isn't just love, David. This could be the future of interspecies cooperation. Alina's research gave David hope, but it also made their situation more complicated. When word of the scientific implications spread, both governments became even more interested in controlling the situation. The Veltharian Council of Nobles demanded a formal hearing to determine whether Zara was worthy of bonding with anyone, let alone a human. The Human Federation wanted to study the potential consciousness bridge before allowing any bonding to proceed. They want to treat us like lab animals, Zara said during one of their rare private meetings. They had to meet in secret now, with Alina acting as a go-between to arrange their encounters. We won't let them, David promised, holding her hands. Whatever happens, we face it together.
8.
The formal hearing took place in Harmony Point's largest conference room. Representatives from dozens of species attended, along with scientists, diplomats, and media from across the galaxy. David and Zara sat at a small table in the center, facing a panel of judges from both their worlds. The Veltharian prosecutor spoke first. A tall noble named Lord Kalen, who had always despised Zara's family line. This female is genetically flawed, he declared, gesturing dismissively at Zara. Her condition represents a weakness in our bloodline. To allow her to bond, especially with an alien, would contaminate our royal heritage, objection called. Out an unexpected voice. Princess Lyra stood up in the gallery, stunning everyone present. I wish to speak on behalf of my sister. Emperor Zethan looked shocked. Lyra, what are you doing? Something I should have done years ago, Lyra replied. Walking to the front of the room? I have spent my entire life being called perfect, but my sister saved hundreds of lives while I stood by and did nothing. Who was truly worthy here? The room buzzed with whispers as Lyra continued. Zara has abilities that none of us possess. She has intelligence that surpasses most of our advisors. She has kindness that I have never matched. If anyone is flawed here, it is those of us who were too blind to see her worth. David felt his heart swell with gratitude for Lyra's unexpected support, but the human prosecutor was equally harsh. Dr. Kim has violated every protocol of diplomatic conduct, declared Admiral Chen, a stern woman from Earth's military council. His actions have put critical peace negotiations at risk for personal desires. Personal desires? David stood up, unable to stay silent. Admiral, with respect, everything I've done has been for the betterment of both our species. Princess. Zara saved this station when our best experts failed. She represents possibilities we've never imagined. You represent chaos and unprofessional conduct. Admiral Chen replied coldly. Captain Torres, the station's chief engineer, suddenly stood up. If I may speak, she called out. Dr. Kim and Princess Zara saved my life and the lives of everyone. On this station, I don't care about protocols or bloodlines. I care about people who do the right thing when it matters. More voices joined in. Scientists who had witnessed Zara's abilities, diplomats who had seen David's dedication to peace, even some Veltharian nobles who had begun to question their own prejudices. The hearing continued for 3 days. Expert after expert testified about genetic compatibility, diplomatic protocols, and the potential benefits or dangers of the proposed bonding. Through it all, David and Zara sat together, drawing strength from each other's presence. On the final day, Alina presented her research about the consciousness bridge possibilities. The scientific implications were so significant that even the harshest critics had to admit the potential value. But the most powerful moment came when Zara finally spoke for herself. I have spent my entire life being told I was worthless because I look different, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. But David saw past my appearance to who I really am. He saw my abilities when others saw only flaws. He offered me love when others offered only rejection. She turned to look at David, her violet eyes shining with tears. If that is not the foundation for a strong bond, then I do not understand what is. The judges deliberated for hours while David and Zara waited in a small adjoining room. They held hands, both knowing that their entire future hung in the balance. "Whatever they decide," David said quietly, "I don't regret asking you to bond with me. Nor do I regret saying yes," Zara replied. "Even if they forbid it, you have given me something precious. You have shown me that I am worthy of love." When the judges finally returned, the room was packed with spectators. Emperor Zethan and Admiral Chen sat with stern expressions, while Alina and Lyra looked nervously hopeful. The lead judge, a wise old Veltharian named Elder Thane, stood to deliver the verdict. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, he began, "This council has reached a decision regarding the proposed bonding between Dr. David Kim and Princess Zara Velthanese." David squeezed Zara's hand as they waited to learn their fate. Elder Thane cleared his throat, and the massive conference room fell completely silent. David felt Zara's hand trembling in his as they waited for the words that would determine their future. "This council recognizes that the proposed bonding between Dr. David Kim and Princess Zara presents unprecedented challenges to traditional protocols," Elder Thane began. "However, we have also witnessed unprecedented circumstances that require unprecedented solutions." David's heart pounded as the elder continued. "Princess Zara's heroic actions saved hundreds of lives, proving that her differences are not weaknesses, but unique strengths. Dr. Kim's dedication to seeing beyond surface appearances demonstrates the kind of understanding we need for true interspecies cooperation." The elder paused, looking directly at David and Zara. "Therefore, this council grants permission for the bonding, with one condition." David and Zara exchanged hopeful glances, afraid to breathe. "You must undergo the traditional Veltharian trials of unity," Elder Thane announced. "3 tests that will prove the strength and sincerity of your bond. Only if you pass all 3 trials will the bonding be officially recognized by both our governments." Emperor Zethan stood up angrily. "Trials are sacred Veltharian traditions. No human has ever attempted them. Perhaps it is time to expand our traditions," Elder Thane replied calmly. "If their bond is truly strong, the trials will prove it. If not, the matter will be settled without further debate." Admiral Chen, also, looked displeased, and if they fail, then Dr. Kim returns to Earth, and Princess Zara remains with her people, Elder Thane said firmly. "The bonding proposal will be permanently rejected." David looked at Zara, seeing determination replacing fear in her violet eyes. "We accept," they said together. The trials were scheduled to begin the next day. That evening, Princess Lyra visited Zara in her quarters, bringing ancient texts about the trials. "I want to help you prepare," Lyra said, sitting beside her sister. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what David saw in you." "What changed your mind?" Zara asked. Lyra was quiet for a moment. "Watching you save the station made me realize how small I've been. I spent my whole life thinking perfection meant never making mistakes, never showing weakness. But real perfection is about courage, kindness, and doing what's right, even when it's difficult." She handed Zara an ornate book. "These are the trial descriptions. The first is the trial of truth, where you must share your deepest fears with each other. The second is the trial of sacrifice, where you must be willing to give up what matters most for your partner's happiness. Third is the trial of unity, where your minds must work together to solve an impossible problem." "How do couples usually prepare?" Zara asked. "They don't," Lyra admitted. "These trials test things that can't be practiced. Either you truly know and love each other, or you don't." Meanwhile, David met with Alina and Captain Torres, who had become his strongest supporters. "The trials aren't just tests," Alina explained. "They're designed to create a permanent mental connection between bonded partners. If you succeed, you'll literally be able to sense each other's thoughts and emotions." "That sounds intense," David said. "It is," Torres agreed. "But given Zara's unique neural patterns and your strong emotional connection, you two might actually have an advantage." The next morning, David and Zara stood before a panel of judges in a special chamber designed for the trials. The room was filled with bioneural equipment that would monitor their mental and emotional states throughout the Tests. Are you ready for the trial of truth? Elder Thane asked. David and Zara nodded, holding hands as bioneural sensors were placed on their foreheads. You must now share your deepest fear with your partner, Elder Thane announced. The sensors will detect any attempt to lie or hold back information. Zara went first, her voice barely above a whisper. My deepest fear is that you will eventually realize I'm not worth the sacrifices you're making, that you'll wake up one day and regret choosing someone like me. David felt her pain as if it were his own, the bioneural connection amplifying their emotional bond. My deepest fear is that I'm not strong enough to protect you from the cruelty of people who can't see your worth. I'm afraid I'll fail you when you need me most. The sensors glowed brightly, confirming their complete honesty. Elder Thane nodded. Approvingly, the trial of truth is complete. You have shared your vulnerabilities without reservation. The trial of sacrifice was even more challenging. Each partner was asked what they would give up for the other's happiness. I would give up my position as princess and leave my family forever if it meant David could continue his diplomatic work without controversy, Zara said without hesitation. I would give up my career, my citizenship, everything I've worked for, if it meant Zara could live free from judgment and rejection, David replied immediately. The judges exchanged surprised glances. Most couples struggled with this trial, but David and Zara had answered without any hesitation. The trial of sacrifice is complete, Elder Thane announced. You have proven your willingness to put your partner's welfare above your own. The final trial was the most difficult. David and Zara were presented with a complex, bioneural puzzle that supposedly had no solution. They had to work together, mind to mind, to find an answer. As the bioneural connection deepened, David suddenly experienced the world through Zara's enhanced senses. He could feel the living energy of the bioneural systems around them, see patterns of light and data that were invisible to normal perception. At the same time, Zara gained access to David's logical, analytical thinking patterns. Together, they approached the puzzle from angles neither could have managed alone. The solution isn't to solve the puzzle, Zara said suddenly, her eyes brightening. With understanding, it's to rewrite the puzzle itself, David finished, their thoughts flowing together seamlessly. Working as one mind with two perspectives, they redesigned the bioneural pathways, creating a new pattern that was more efficient than the original. The judges stared in amazement as the bioneural system not only solved the puzzle, but improved upon its own design. The trial of unity is complete, Elder Thane said, his voice filled with wonder. Not only have you passed all three trials, but you have demonstrated abilities we did not know were possible. The bonding ceremony took place 3 days later, in Harmony Point's largest observation deck, with the stars as witnesses. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, and the event was broadcast across the galaxy. Zara wore traditional Veltharian ceremonial robes that shimmered with her natural light patterns, while David wore formal Earth diplomatic attire. But the most beautiful part was the way they looked at each other, their love visible to everyone present. Emperor Zethan performed the Veltharian portion of the ceremony, his voice filled with pride rather than shame for the first time when speaking about Zara. Admiral Chen represented Earth's government, officially recognizing the historic union. Today we witnessed not just the bonding of two individuals, but the birth of a new possibility, Elder Thane declared as David and Zara exchanged vows. May your union be a bridge between worlds and a beacon of hope for all who feel different, or alone. As they completed the final bonding ritual, their bioneural connection became permanent. David could feel Zara's joy as if it were his own, and she could sense his love surrounding her like a warm embrace. 5 years later, David and Zara had become the most famous couple in the galaxy. They founded the Institute for Interspecies, understanding where their unique mental connection helped other species learn to communicate and cooperate. Zara's condition, once seen as a shameful flaw, was now recognized as a gift that allowed unprecedented connections between different forms of consciousness. Young Veltharians with similar conditions were no longer hidden away, but celebrated as potential bridges between worlds. David's career had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. As the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies bonding, he helped negotiate peace agreements, and establish communication protocols between dozens of different civilizations. Their love story had inspired others to look beyond surface differences and recognize the value in everyone. Harmony Point had become a symbol of acceptance and understanding where beings from all worlds could come together as equals. On quiet evenings, David and Zara would still sit together watching the stars, their hands intertwined and their thoughts flowing as one. They had proven that love could overcome any barrier, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. The princess, whom no one wanted, had found someone who saw her true worth. And together they had shown the universe that differences weren't flaws to be hidden, but gifts to be celebrated. Chat Control Sonnet 4.